Before money, human wealth had a heartbeat. It bled, it rotted, and it died. But then, we did something insane. We traded our food for a useless seashell, not to eat it, but to trade an invisible promise called trust. Welcome to the dawn of Proto-Money. At the end of the old barter world, people had learned an important lesson. Exchange could help them survive. It could move food, tools, animal skins, salt, grain, and animals from one hand to another. It could bring communities together. It could create trust. But barter had limits that became harder to ignore. The right person was not always there. The right need did not always appear at the right time. Some goods were too heavy. Some were too large. Some spoiled before they could be exchanged. And some were valuable in one place, but almost useless somewhere else. So, the ancient world did not suddenly invent money. It began searching. Not with written plans, not with laws, not with kings ordering people what to use. The search began through experience. People noticed that certain objects were easier to accept. Some goods moved from one exchange to another more smoothly than others. Some were trusted even by strangers. Some could travel farther than the person who first owned them. Nobody needed to call them money. Their behavior was already changing. They were becoming something new. The first steps toward proto-money had begun. In a barter system, many objects changed hands only once. A basket of food might be eaten. A piece of wood might be burned. An animal skin might be used by the person who received it. But some objects behaved differently. They did not disappear after one exchange. They returned. A small, rare object could pass from one person to another, then to another group, then to a traveler, then to a distant community. Its journey did not end with a single need. This was important, because when an object kept returning in exchanges, people began to see it differently. It was not only useful for the person holding it, it could also be useful because someone else might accept it later. That idea changed everything. For the first time, an object could carry value beyond the moment. A person might accept it not because they needed it immediately, but because they believed another person would want it in the future. This was one of the first quiet movements toward money. Value was no longer tied only to direct use. It was beginning to move through trust. For an object to become useful in repeated exchange, it needed more than value. It had to survive. Food could be extremely important, but many foods could spoil. Fresh meat could feed a family, but it could not travel far without losing its usefulness. Some plants, fruits, and organic goods were fragile. A long journey could destroy them. Weather could damage them. Time could take away their value. So, people slowly learned to pay attention to objects that lasted longer. A hard shell, shaped stone, a polished bead, a piece of metal, a mineral, a rare natural material that did not rot quickly. These objects had an advantage. They could wait. They could be stored. They could travel through forests, rivers, dry lands, and mountains. They could pass through many hands without losing their form. Durability made people more confident. When an object survived time, it became easier to trust, and trust made exchange easier. A lasting object was useful. But that was not enough. People also needed to recognize it. If an object was strange, unclear, or difficult to understand, exchange became risky. The person receiving it had to believe that others would also accept it. That belief was not automatic. It grew through repeated experience. When many people saw the same kind of object being accepted again and again, its meaning became stronger. A shell was no longer just a shell. A bead was no longer just decoration. A shaped stone was no longer only a tool or material. It became part of a shared understanding. People did not need written rules for this to happen. Memory was enough. Stories were enough. Repeated exchange was enough. A community could remember which objects were accepted, which ones were rejected, and which ones traveled safely between groups. Over time, recognition became part of value. The object itself mattered, but the belief around the object mattered too. This was a powerful change, because money would later depend on the same idea. People accept something because they believe others will accept it as well. Another advantage began to stand out. Size. Some valuable goods were difficult to move. Animals needed care. Large tools were heavy. Grain could be useful, but large amounts required storage and protection. Many barter goods demanded effort before they could be exchanged. But small objects could travel differently. A person could carry them in a hand, a pouch, or a simple bundle. They could be hidden, protected, moved across long distances. This made them powerful. A small object could represent a much larger value in the mind of a community. It could be easier to carry than an animal, easier to protect than a basket of grain, easier to keep than fresh food. This did not make every small object valuable. But when small size joined with durability, rarity, and recognition, something important happened. The object became practical for exchange. It could move where heavier goods could not. It could wait where fragile goods could not. And it could be accepted in situations where direct barter was difficult. Humanity was slowly learning that value did not need to be large to be powerful. The first proto-money did not appear because one person invented it in a single moment. It emerged from thousands of small choices. One person accepted an object, another accepted it again, a traveler carried it farther. A distant group recognized it, a community remembered its usefulness. And slowly, the object gained a new role. It still had its own physical form. It might have been a shell, a bead, a stone, a piece of metal, or another rare material. But its meaning had grown beyond the object itself. It became a bridge between one exchange and the next, between one community and another, between present need and future possibility. This is what made proto-money different from ordinary barter goods. It was not simply consumed. It was not only used once, it could keep moving. And every time it moved successfully, confidence in it became stronger. Money had not fully arrived. But the ancient world was no longer only exchanging goods. It was beginning to exchange trust in objects. The first proto-money was not perfect. It was not official. It was not the same everywhere. Different communities trusted different things. Some valued rare shells. Some valued beads or stones. Some valued salt, animals, metals, or other objects connected to their own world. But beneath all these differences, the same pattern was forming. People were searching for objects that could last, objects that could travel, objects that could be recognized, objects that others would accept again. That search changed the direction of human exchange. Barter had taught people the limits of direct trade. Proto-money began to offer a new path, Not a complete solution yet, but a step closer. A step toward a world where value could move more freely. A step toward money. And across different lands, far from one another, human communities began experimenting with this same idea in their own ways. If money did not yet exist, what did people use instead? That question takes us to the next chapter. Humanity's first experiments with money.